Barbara, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about best sex tips for women, understanding behavior, responses, and individual differences.
And Barbara, remember we promised that we have a special guest in the building. And we want to try reach out on phone, man, and so that we just fulfill our promise. Hiyo mtambo ingine ilileta shida, lakini tutumie hii simu. She's on hold right now, and we're just gonna go straight into it. There we are. Let me just pick it up. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Hi,
Kaz,
Kaz.
at last.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Very
are
well.
good.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Very kind of you that you stayed up this late, eh? Just trying and
Oh,
trying.
no. I'm going to be up much later, so it's okay.
Thank you so much. Yes. So if you're joining us, we are joined by Kaz. Kaz is a sexpert, and she's joining us to help make sense of the conversation we've been having. Even further, from a woman's perspective, we are talking about best tips for women and basically understanding behavior responses and individual differences. Kaz, we've gone quite a bit, but I am very excited to hear your feedback. Of course, you've talked to a bunch of women more than I as a man. What is the one thing you feel a bunch of women, I would not say many, but a bunch of women want to communicate to men that in regards to their, sexual experiences? Because a lot of us are green and we don't own up to it. So that you meet a woman and you're gazing on all your gazes and she's rolling her eyes and you have no idea about it. So what is the one message, if you would say, that is one thing that women grapple with that men need to be cognizant of?
Well, for starters, there isn't one.
Are they 50? Good Lord.
Please share. Please share.
I feel like, unfortunately, because of the technical difficulties, I'm going to have to kind of sum them up a little bit.
Okay, that's fine.
But I'm going to touch on a few things. And Barbara, I was listening to you speak earlier, and there's so many things that you said that hold so much water. So
Yes.
kudos to you for representing a lot of women out there as well. But to start with, I want to say communication is actually the most important thing when it comes to any kind of interaction between partners.
Yes.
And women definitely want more of a communication. And I'll give an example. I put out on my Instagram page at the Spread Pod, I had put out like a task to people to ask their partners, how was our sex last time? And then on a text message, and then screenshot the response and send it to me. And majority of the people who are my followers and people who listen to the podcast and people who basically subscribe to my content are women. And women were, a lot of them were asking men. But a lot of the responses came from their partners being very surprised, like, oh, why would you ask me that? And thanks for asking, and then let's talk about it. The last time was like this and like that. And some people went into details, like, I really liked it when you did this, and I liked it when you did that. And that conversation in itself led to so many people having more sex on that night.
Oh,
So
wow.
that goes to show that a lot of communication is not had between partners. And the more communication that you have just about your sex and your sexual experiences and what some of the things that you like, or some of the things that you want to experiment, I mean, a lot of that kind of communication can lead to better sexual experiences for both partners, right?
Because not to lay blame, but who do you think the culprit is? Women better than communicating than men, or men better than at communicating? Do you think you could zero in on a culprit who could work harder?
So, I mean, generally women are better at communicating. Women speak more than men. I've been watching this Netflix show called 100 Humans, and one of the experiments that they did was trying to figure out who speaks more, women or men. And women actually speak, they talk more than men. If you ask a woman a question, how are you, she can go into detail of how she is, as opposed to a man, if you ask him how are you, he'll be like, fine, you know?
Yes.
So just generally because women use more words than men, women are more communicative in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So not to say that this is also very generalized. So it's not to say that there are not men out there who like to communicate. There's definitely some relationships where men are more communicative and more sensitive than women, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is, in order to have better sex, is to communicate more and to communicate better.
What does better
and
mean?
Actually, and this is what I was about to say. And actually, just to communicate in a way that your partner is able to understand. So sometimes communicating with your partner, sometimes your partner doesn't want to be taken to a restaurant to be asked how was the sex that we had last night. Sometimes it could be over dinner, sometimes it could be while we're driving, sometimes it could be, like different people have different ways of communicating. So once you can figure out the best way in which your partner can communicate, and you use that to communicate the way that they're going to be able to understand your message best.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Okay.
How about the body? How deep is the body in regard to when you're talking to women? Like confidence, we spoke about it earlier. I just want to know your thoughts on it. Confidence in your own body as a woman, because women have different bodies, but the Hollywood has this pressure that they've given that is affecting sexual confidence just because of a certain body shape.
Of course, there is the whitewashed image of what a body should look like. And even if you think about how they portray sex scenes, or how, like, people watch porn, and if you look at the type of bodies or the way that the women enjoy pleasure in those type of scenarios, a lot of the time it's very whitewashed, for starters.
Yeah.
But secondly, it's entertainment, and people forget that the movies that they're so engrossed in, and the quando se smia of the way they passionately kiss, is so it's entertainment. It's not necessarily based on real life. And if we remove ourselves, Barbara, I remember you mentioning something about unlearning. There's a lot of unlearning that we have to do that makes us more confident in the way that we feel about our bodies, and knowing that, just understanding the fact that there is a reason that your partner has chosen you, and the same reason that you have chosen your partner. And even when we talk about body types, we have to remember that men also have a lot of insecurities around their bodies that they don't talk about. With women, we'll be like on a Facebook group talking about what diet should I do, what workouts should I do, how can I, trying to make ourselves better, trying to figure out ways to feel more sexy, to be more confident. But there's no way that I can imagine a typical Kenyan man, and this is also very general, going like a Facebook group on how to better myself so that I can feel more sexy and more confident.
True.
Can you imagine like a similar quote, like Jane Mukami's page of 21 Days of Change?
Can you imagine?
Or Taruri Gatere's page.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a man who's decided to express what he wants in bed on the daily.
Exactly. So because, again, communication comes so much more easy and more frequently and more just like fluidly. For women, it's like when it comes to body types and insecurities, women are so much more open about that. And if we can unlearn the whitewashed version of what a body should look like, then we can begin to feel like all bodies are beautiful.
Yes.
To be honest, all bodies are beautiful, period.
Yeah.
And once we start to digest that information, it's going to take a while. But once we start to digest that information in little bite-sized pieces, then we can understand that there's a reason why your partner is with you. Because they love you for your entirety, or they want you for your entirety. Whether it's a relationship or a one-night stand, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yes.
So we should. It's a slow unlearning process, but you have to put those sticky notes on your mirror and remind yourself every day when you're brushing your teeth.
Kaz, what are your thoughts on the stereotyping of women when it comes to our sexuality?
I'm sorry, say again?
What are your thoughts on stereotyping of women when it comes to our sexuality? Like the way there are a lot of double standards as compared to men?
Could you be a little bit more precise to that question?
For example, earlier on, I think you were listening. We're talking about the double standards that men have towards us. Like there's an issue. Maybe we were talking about of if a woman was carrying condoms, it would some men will look at it in a type of way. And if it was a man, then that would be okay. And and if
okay. I see what you're
women
saying.
were stereotyped, if I'm more vocal about my sexuality, another man will find I'm too forward or too pushy or think I'm a slut, and they want the meek character. Yet again, they still want me to be that confident particular person. So what are your thoughts about that? The stereotypes that we
Well,
face.
again, it comes down to whitewashing. Like a lot of the sexuality that I teach comes from a standpoint of like decolonizing sexuality.
Yeah.
So we've been colonized, like very deeply colonized, because it's taken us generations to still be living up to this standard of like a what they say, a Mary Magdalene, and there's a contrast, like this holy mother type woman,
The
which is
Madonna.
what women are supposed exactly. That phrase is a phrase for that I can't think of it right now. But basically, women are kind of raised to be these holy, like only have sex when you're married, and then when you have sex, you only do it so that you can have children. But then in today's day and age, actually during Memorial's day and age, women have been owning their sexuality, and it is very threatening for a lot of people, and not necessarily just men, even just for other women. In fact, a lot of the shaming comes from other women. Women shame you for being too sexual because, you know, in fact, if anybody is calling anybody a slut, it's a woman calling another woman a slut. Usually men are really excited about that scenario. It's like, oh, she's a slut, then I have got a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's more about us and how we think about ourselves and how we imagine that we're supposed to be. And the minute that we begin to see somebody else is not living up to that thing that we are supposed to be, then we start to shame them. So a lot of the time, this she's carrying condoms, or I know there's another one where when a woman wears matching underwear, it's like she's like a bra and panties, and she's ready for it, or you know, all of those like really stupid things. But like honestly, like I'm carrying condoms in my bag because I don't want to be safe, and I'm ready for any kind of sex, which means I'm owning my sexuality, and also means I'm being safe. Period. 2, I'm wearing matching underwear because I look, man, I'm Instagram ready for that. I want to take a picture of my very cute bra and panty that are matching. Or I want to come home and take off my work clothes, and when I take off my work clothes, I don't feel like shit because I'm wearing this super cute lacy bra and underwear. Or I want to carry condoms and wear matching underwear, and I want to go out and I want to find somebody who's ready to have a good time, and I'm being safe and I'm being sexy. Like, what better platform could possibly have?
Yeah, man, what better? Kaz, if it's the first time I'm hearing your voice and I want to reach out to you, how do I find you? Tell us about how, as a lady out there or a gentleman who wants to learn more, how we can find you.
Okay, so you can follow my greatest platform for having conversations about anything sex positive is at the Spread Pod on Instagram, actually across the board on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter.
At
and
the Spread
also,
Pod.
Yes, at the Spread Pod.
Yeah.
And you can subscribe to the podcast, which we just released episode 66 on yesterday. So we're the Spread Podcast, just like on all of your podcast apps, or just Google the Spread Podcast.
All right, Kaz, it was thank you so much for your patience, though, for just hanging in there. At least we got to hear your voice.
No problem.
Next time, I pray that we'll do better, and hopefully you'll be here in the
And
flesh.
see my pretty face!
Yeah,
Yes!
yeah, man. But have a good rest of the evening, and stay safe.
Thank you, you too. And please carry those condoms. Don't let
And,
nobody tell you not
Kaz, remember to wash those hands.
all day before you masturbate.
All right, thank you so much. That was Kaz Lucas. You can find the Spread Podcast. She has one of the biggest podcasts, I think, in Africa, and you can learn quite a bit